Welcome to Mike's Real Estate Podcast. Today I have a guest. His name is Michael Harn, and he has a construction company, and he's a builder in the Portland and Vancouver area. Is that right?
That is correct.
Named Anlon Construction, correct?
Well, it's Anlon, but
Sorry, I keep doing that.
as long as you can find us, it's okay.
And what does that stand for?
Yeah, Anlon means great champion in Irish. So years ago when we started the company, I needed an A name so you could find it in the yellow pages, which doesn't matter anymore. And so, yeah, we wanted something Irish, and that's what we came up with.
That was the old hack, the old SEO hack of hacking the yellow pages.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's fantastic. So what got you into construction?
You know, growing up, my dad was a heating contractor who eventually became a building inspector. My uncle was a roofer and still is. So I'd been around that my whole life. And then I went into the service and I got out of the service and started framing and then decided to build my first houses when I was 22 years old.
So 22, got that nice young start.
Yes.
So that was just 10 years ago, right?
I would love to believe that's the case, but no, it was not. 1997 is when I started building.
How hard was that to do your first home at that age?
Well, I mean, there was an advantage of having been in the service and being in leadership positions as a young man there. You know, when you're a 22-year-old builder, you're working collaboratively as opposed to, you know, my dad who had left the city at that point to go and build on his own. He was able to do things more as a dictator if he chose. That doesn't work when you're 22 years old telling a 50-year-old plumber what to do. Instead, you're collaboratively trying to make the process work for everybody. And so that was fun. I mean, they were willing to teach. You know, the construction knowledge has just kind of come, you know, over time. My dad, being the inspector, loved going through code books and this, that, and the other. But you know, really, it was about collaboratively learning how to manage people and expectations. So.
How big was that learning curve that first 5 years of managing these people who were twice your age, maybe?
It was huge. Yeah, it was really big. The advantage for me had always been that I wasn't afraid to ask questions. I'd been curious my whole life. And so, you know, when I first started building, you know, the one advantage was my dad had been an inspector for the city, so city of Portland, and my first houses I was building was in the city of Portland. So I had the relationships with a lot of these inspectors, so they were willing to answer questions for me, be proactive in solutions, and then I was able to get involved in the Home Builders Association, and then also just find mentors in both business as well as building. And so that's been, you know, really the key. There's certainly mistakes that have been made, and a lot of that was really more perception mistakes, like me not understanding why going out water skiing in the middle of the day was a bad idea, even though I could get my job done. Clients didn't find that to be professional. So, you know, me recognizing how to manage people and processes was a really big deal.
So I talk to a lot of agents who are younger that are getting into this business and trying to get the confidence of people who are twice their age to deal with them on hundreds of thousands of dollars. How did you convey that?
That was the biggest challenge. So being a builder, if you're building in the spec market, you know, the market is telling you what the value is, right? So the house is willing to sell based on whatever the comps are telling you. As we began to build more custom houses, you had to put a value on your own time. And that was very, very difficult. You know, I also was framing at the beginning. Again, that was easier. There was a price per foot. That was the going rate for your time. And so, you know, being able to really have a level understanding of what it was you were going to bring as a value add is what mattered. And then being able to communicate and articulate what it was you were going to do that was going to bring them value, I think was the only way to do it. But there was a lot of self-doubt at the beginning of figuring out how to value myself. And truthfully, it's something still, you know, I mean, I've been doing it for a long, long time, and we still struggle with that.
So that never goes away, huh?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm incredibly confident in our ability to do it, but when you're sitting down and having to say, my time is worth X, um, and it's not that at the end of the day you're necessarily going to see something different. That's hard. I mean, and realtors are running into the same thing.
Oh yeah.
You have clients where you're showing them one house and clients where you're showing them 200, and ironically the commission is generally the same. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's difficult to be able to quantify, and that's where it's relationship based, and that's what's really been the big thing for me.
Where did you think you would be at this point in your life versus where you are? Like you had probably a vision at 22 of like, this is how it's going to be. I'm going to be doing this and this. How different does that look as far
Well,
as
I
with
was going to
this?
be retired twice. That's what I'd said at different times. I think that the goalposts have moved consistently, and for me, the initial movement of the goalposts was, in about probably 2001, 2002. I built the first house that I'd ever lost money on. That forced me to look at things differently. Again, being in an industry that wasn't based on making so much a week or so much an hour or so much a month, the idea of actually losing money, writing checks out of my pocket that were real, that was scary. And then, there's been different things in my life, where the desire at one point was growth almost for the sake of growth, because that made sense. Build more houses, no different than sell more houses. And so what's happened over time is, as my perspective on life has shifted, and there's been some monumental moments that make that happen. One, getting married, 2009, having kids, all of those different things that happen have forced me to shift the overall goals of the company, the goals of myself, both, from a financial standpoint, as well as a balance of how much I do or don't want to work. So I think that, it's changed in the last year, let alone from when I was 22. 22 was a naive time where it was, the ideas that I had were more based in fiction than they were anything else. And now it's about trying to figure out and understand that it's okay that things are going to change. I think it's important to continue to have goals and things to strive for. But the truth is, once you've attained them, you're normally just going to be setting new ones.
So you lost money on that one house. How did that come about? Was it big mistakes? Was it just unluck, bad luck, or what was that?
Um, well, in hindsight, it was mistakes. The mistake in that case was we'd bought a lot that was on a hillside, and it had topography that was involved in it. We had done what we thought was great due diligence on it and budgeted for it. We were building a spec house. So the market had told us what the cost or what the value of that house was going to be. And what we didn't recognize was there was a lot of fill on that property. So when we got to excavation, foundation, and some of these costs that were affected directly by the lot, we were in a situation where we were over budget within a month. And that was the worst part. You had to finish a house at a level of quality to be able to move it, knowing that you were going to lose money. I mean, so that being said, it was the right thing. And we've had other times where we've had projects that didn't go as well, and some of that's market based, some of that is decision based. I think there's a little bit of luck in everything, but I think a lot of it comes down to oftentimes we take the information and spin it whichever way we want. If we want to talk ourselves into a deal or out of a deal, we can do either.
That is so true. That is so true. I've heard many a story about homes on slopes going very difficult as far as having to do supports and things like that just cost so much more than what they expected.
Well, they can. I mean, we really pride ourselves on our ability to do difficult houses, and a lot of that just comes down to we're willing to spend money on upfront due diligence. If I look back at that first deal where we lost money, if we would have brought in a geotechnical engineer right off the bat, we'd have known. Now, we would have spent the money on the geotech. We would have not bought the lot, which would have meant that we would have lost the money from the geotech, but we certainly would have lost less money. So sometimes it's the investment to find out the information that talks you out of a deal that is even more valuable than the information that talks you into the deal.
During the downturn, how deep were you when that downturn came, and how did you survive? And a lot of companies went under
Yeah.
during that time.
So, when we started Anlon Construction, we started in 2009. And so right in the trough. And I had been working for a large production building company my job was to grow production and to make us a large player in the market. We were the largest developer in Clackamas County at the time. And what really happened for me was when I realized that company wasn't going to work its way through the downturn in a way that worked with my values, I knew that I couldn't be there. My belief was that everyone was going to do their best to protect themselves in the downturn. The issue was, were they going to do it at all cost? And once I found out that they weren't going to do something with the values that I agreed with, I left. The way that we worked through the downturn was there was a lot of banks that were taking back a lot of property and they didn't know what to do with it. And I'd created a strong relationship with these different people over the years where we were really able to be an asset to those lenders, where we were able to, when they were taking back a piece of property or a house and unable to finish it or didn't know what to do with it, we were able to help them finish that up. And what really got us started was in 2009, there was a subdivision that was taken back by a lender. Taking back a house for a bank is significantly easier. A house is very systematic in how you build it. So if you can recognize the stage it's at, it's relatively easy to figure out how to finish it if you've done it a lot. Subdivisions are different because they can happen in different orders. So this bank had asked us if we would finish the development. I had agreed to it. We had negotiated a fee that they would pay me. And then I went back to them to renegotiate. And they were, of course, frustrated, thinking I was going to ask for more money. And that wasn't the case. I actually asked for 50% of the money that I had asked for, but I wanted them to agree to give me 2 construction loans. And in 2009, the ability to get construction loans was gold. And so in 2009, we were able to build spec houses when other people weren't. And so it was always about trying to reverse engineer our ability to build our way out of a problem. And so, kind of looking at something in a different way. And that's how, really how we were able to get through a downturn market.
So the downturn actually seems like it gave you some opportunity.
I think I'm a better builder because of it. I mean, I learned more valuable lessons in the downturn than I ever have in opportunities moving forward. Again, I believe there's got to be easier ways to learn them than we did. But it forced me, and it's a lesson that I haven't forgotten, to evaluate, reevaluate, and then reevaluate again everything we do, how we do it, and why we do it.
How did you have the confidence to do a spec home in that market versus getting someone lined up and saying, I'll build what you want?
Well, building a custom house didn't seem like an option because there wasn't anybody around, at least for me at the time. And the spec market, it's funny. We did it out in Yamhill, so in a small boutique neighborhood, not even a neighborhood, out in the country. And what I knew was we weren't going to be able to drive traffic the way you would to an area that was in a more populated area. So our capture rate had to be tremendous. And so I specifically went out, walked through the other houses that were in the area and on the market, both existing houses as well as new construction. I needed to figure out how we could bring 10% greater value to those houses and be able to sell them at the same price or less. And so it was, again, backing into and reverse engineering exactly what we needed to. And at that point, I figured the mathematics would work. And I was really, really involved. Back then we didn't have staff, so I was, going to be showing up at our open houses. And for a lot of people, getting to meet the builder, getting to ask questions about why did you do this or how did you build it or whatever proved to be very valuable. So it was really me controlling as many of the variables as I could. And in doing that, I am imagining that's where the confidence came from, but probably just winging it.
How'd you decide what that 10% value was above everything else? What did that look like?
Could you say that one more time?
You said that you made sure to give value 10% above. Was there certain things you did that were just had more value, or were you pricing it so that was built in? What do you mean by
Yeah,
that?
it was more when we were going through the initial design of the houses. We were trying, my belief then was that specific rooms in the houses sell to specific clients. And so since I knew we were out in the country, I knew we had to have additional places for storage, whether that was going to be toys or tractors. So everything we built had a 2-car garage with a 3rd bay tandem. And then I believed that kitchens and master bathrooms were going to sell the houses as well. So we invested more money to make the master suite a very, very special house, or a very, very special part of the house, as well as the kitchens. And so we certainly did it by putting in a higher end level of finish. But we paid a tremendous amount of attention to the front door. All of the front doors we put in were 3'6" wide by 8 foot tall. So on these small houses, they had very grand entrances. They had a garage where, unfortunately, if you were to look at it through the model of, using demographics, the husband was going to have the area for all of his, yard tools and all of that. The wife was going to have this amazing oasis to be able to hang out in, and they were going to be able to buy it for 230 grand. And so that was the way that we were doing it.
I like that. So speaking about them talking to the builder and knowing, how it worked and what was used, how does the average person get kind of an idea of if a house was built well, especially when it's finished? I know sometimes they can walk through areas and see as they're building, but how can they just tell from the outside?
Well, I think it's oftentimes difficult for a buyer to tell on a brand new house if it's completely finished how it was built. My recommendation, for a lot of people, if you're buying in an area where that builder's building other houses, take a look at it, see what level of pride they're taking in the project. How are they cleaning up the house? How, if it's no different than anything else, how they take care of that property is inherently showing you the level of care that they're putting into everything moving forward. And then, being able to ask questions, whether that is, everybody has a friend who's an amateur contractor, right? Everybody has a buddy who's an electrician or a heating guy or a remodeler or a deck builder. Find a few of those buzzwords, whatever they are, and then be willing to ask that builder. And you're going to be able to read their body language well enough by asking those questions. What I tell people is, if my desire is for you to be a more educated person when we have this conversation, even if we don't get to build for you, my desire specifically is to do whatever I can to raise the level of our industry. I think there's a lot of builders that do that. And so then what it comes down to is, on the custom side especially, what is the experience that you're going to have? And then from a true quality standpoint, it's going to come down to being able to talk to them about the specific warranty that they're offering. The vast majority of things that make a house higher quality are going to be behind the walls. And the challenge is, that's the part most people are wanting to spend money on their finishes because that's what they can see, touch, and feel. But in the long run, that's not what's giving you the longer life of that house or the higher quality of living inside of it.
I've had plenty of people say this builder does shoddy work. This builder does, that builder, and then I'll hear other people say that same builder is fantastic.
Well,
Um, with the big builders, how do we, I know that they've got so many people working on them. How do we kind of double check through the process maybe to make sure that those guys who they're not talking to the actual builder, there's a foreman that's kind of coming and going. How can they check up on those maybe? I don't know.
yeah, well, I mean, I think that, within reason, no different than anything else, the squeaky wheel is going to be paid attention to. I mean, if you look at it, when you're talking about the larger production builders, whether they're the publicly traded guys or just some of the bigger guys, they're really a manufacturing company. And at the end of the day, that's what their desire is. Their desire is to be able to, through repetition, to be able to create the same thing over and over again. And that's how they're able to potentially save you money. Now, the secondary issue with that is you're sacrificing for that some of the intimacy that you would have on a custom home build and the inputs that you would have. That's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a trade-off. But if and I've had friends that have bought houses from large publics, and my conversation with them has been, get to know that project manager, have a conversation with him. Again, you're all of a sudden not just a number. You're not lot 37, you're Mike. And I think anytime you can do that, it's the same thing you do at your local barista. You would certainly do that for the person builders.
I had a buddy who was with one of the large builders, and they didn't finish on time, and they promised they'll get things done. And I said, look, if you don't get this finished before it closes, you have no leverage. He goes, well, I know the guy, because he was one of those people who just gets to know everybody. Yeah. He still got his stuff done, but it still took him a long time. It helped, and he got some things done, but yeah, it gets a little bit tricky. I get some people who say, hey, I've got this lot that could get turned into 3, it got a home that could be demolished and turned into 3 lots.
Right.
But talking to several people, quite often the cost to develop those 3 lots doesn't always make for a great return. Do you see that as well?
Yeah. So development especially is oftentimes economies to scale, and so we get that call every week. I own a piece of property and it is zoned that I can do X, and zoning is a part of it. It's a very important part of it. But the challenge with land development oftentimes are the off-street improvements that you're going to have to do. So the improvements that don't necessarily have anything to do with your land. The adding of sidewalks where you don't think they should have to be, or the extensions of sewer lines that are so far down the road that make it cost prohibitive. And so once again, we talked earlier about the house that I built where I lost money and we didn't do our due diligence. We did due diligence. We just didn't do it as deeply as we thought we did. So for a lot of people, zoning is giving you 20 to 30% of the answer. It's not giving you all of the answer. And so that becomes really the question on how do you get the maximum information to be able to make that the best opportunity for you.
If someone had something that could be chopped up, is there a minimum lot number that you think that it even makes sense to really look at?
No. Because it's a math equation backwards. I mean, depending on where you're at. I mean, the thing with land is they're not making any more of it. So if you're depending on what your basis is into the land and what the value is of the new lot, it could always work. But certainly there comes a time when, is the development cost of a single lot going to pencil out? I don't know, and so the biggest thing that I recommend to people when they're looking at that is do your best to have it be an unemotional math equation, which is difficult, right? I mean, everything we're doing is somewhat emotional. And so the people that do it for a living recognize that the deal will tell you if it works, and that's where we run into challenges or questions with people that say, I think my land is worth X, or I believe it should only cost this to do that. It's not any different than trying to justify someone else's fee for something else. We can't do that. So the market will tell you, and if you can get those answers before you have invested a large sum of money, then you're way ahead.
Oh man, I had a good question. Oh well, what are you working on right now? What kind of projects?
The majority of what we're doing right now is custom homes. So we're building custom homes for clients. So we're doing that both on acreage pieces as well as infill and subdivisions. Where what we're able to do is design houses from scratch, or modifying a plan that they found. Nowadays with the internet, people are generally finding ideas of what they like, and what we're able to do, as opposed to those larger builders that are manufacturing, is everything from adjusting cabinets by 1/8 of an inch to adjusting a room by 12 inches, because that's what makes sense to you, is a big deal. And so we're doing that. 90% of what we're doing from a build standpoint is that. We're also continuing to do land development. We do land development following it all the way from raw dirt to finishing lots. And then there's different stages at times where we will sell them. And oftentimes we're either joint venturing with the landowner or putting something together that allows for it to be a win-win for both parties, because oftentimes the person who owns the land doesn't necessarily know what to do with it, and how do you create something where we're not really negotiating against them, we're both looking for the best good, which is the greatest value. So
what's your favorite type of home to build?
Well, it's interesting. Most people, when they ask that question, are asking it from a house style. I used to say timber frames because I find them to be absolutely beautiful, but I've only built one. I've built probably 1,500 houses and I've only built one of those, but I found it to be really fun. But my favorite thing to build is when we get to do something that we've never done before. And that's just becoming increasingly rare because we've been able to do so many things. But what is the most fun is being able to sit down with someone like yourself, understand how it is that you live, and then really bring that to life. Because the majority of people, are looking at things through a lens of, I want this many square feet, or I want this many bedrooms. And that's just because that's what they've been conditioned to do. And what I'm wanting to do is understand how you spend your Thanksgiving and understand how you spend your Christmas and what you do in the morning, so we can design the house to be that thing that every day when you wake up and every day when you come home from work, you're excited for it. And that's what building customs does for us. We're able to really bring the feeling of turning that house into specifically your home. And that part's fun. That's the part I enjoy the most.
Have you done any of the skinny homes?
We have, yeah. So years ago, that was what was happening. So you had in Portland, especially, you had these old 50 by 100 lots that used to be 25-foot wide lots. And so we were commonly building 15-foot wide houses. We built, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 of them. 15-foot wide houses,
Crazy.
And really a fascinating product, because it really became an entry-level product. It became something that, even with the high costs of permits and SDCs, because our lot values were there, we were able to come up with an entry-level house. So, that was interesting the first few times we did it, for sure.
Then it kind of and then there's just a limit after a while of how creative you could get.
Yeah, certainly, in 15 feet wide, there's only so many ways to lay it out. But yeah, it really, what became fun was, once again, you're coming into a neighborhood, adjusting. And anytime you're coming to build inside of an existing neighborhood, you're a pain, right? I mean, you're bringing chaos. And so, bringing a product that was helping to raise the values for everybody that was in that area, as well as trying to be a good steward, that was fun. And so, what's happened over time is, as with any other thing that we see as where we think we're ahead of the curve, people catch up, right? So now there's just whole groups of people that are just looking at flat maps for those old shadow lines, and so we just don't find that opportunity quite as often as we did 5 years ago.
Are you finding it harder and harder to find land within close to, close Portland's Tiger, because we had the boom in 2005 and
yeah, certainly, we land is the great variable, right? And on the custom side of things, it is definitely a challenge, because we were talking about this when we were originally building in the Street of Dreams in 2018, which was everybody's dream is different, right? I mean, I happen to choose to live in the country on acreage, and I love having my daughters be able to run around. Other people want to live in townhomes in the middle of Selwood, right? So, for us, the overall just availability of land is less. And certainly now, 5 to 7 years ago, you had all of that land that was not developed between 2009 and 2014, just because the market was so difficult that there were some things that were more available. Now, the majority of those developable pieces have been, attached to in some way, whether it's they've been developed or somebody has them under contract. That doesn't affect our custom home side as much as it does our development side. But certainly, even on the custom side, the challenge that you're running into is, what is the driver for this client? Is it schools? Is it walkability? Is it lot size? And again, that's where everybody is different. And that's really what makes the journey fun, but challenging.
so 1,500 homes. What's the biggest thing you've learned through that journey?
It's all about people. I mean, it's always been about that. But I'm super blessed. I have 2 daughters, one that turns 4 here tomorrow, and another one that's almost 6. And what I love is that even when they come to the office or they come out to the jobs, they're always referencing anybody who's working with us or for us as daddy, are they on your team? And, what I know very simply is I can't do it myself. My company can't do it themselves. And that is everybody from whatever you would consider the lowest rung on the totem pole to the highest. And that has just been something that has continued to play itself out, is that when I was a 22-year-old builder and needing to make sure that those relationships were there just to be able to get the phone answered, and to now being a guy that's done it for long enough to where we're blessed that people want to work with us, those relationships are easily the most important thing. And you have no idea when they're going to come back around. I mean, we had a fascinating thing in last year. We built a house for a client that we had talked to 6 years before. They had originally they were wanting to build on the west side, long ways away. As it is, we built a totally different area, 40 miles from where they had talked about. We hadn't spoken to them in 4 years, but we had treated them with respect, and they find us, and it was just one of the more fulfilling things that because of how we had treated them when we didn't build them a house, we did get the opportunity to build them a house when they were ready. So
That's so true. There's so many things that you are talking about that completely mirrors real estate agents and the way that we work and the things that we go through. I'm loving this. Let's say there's an agent who wants to get into finding land, finding clients, connecting with builders. What advice would you have for someone trying to get in that part of the market and get to know builders and work with them?
Well, I think that, there's specific segments. It's kind of like you asked, what is it that we do? For a long time when I was younger, we would build anything, right? The desire was, for gosh sake, all we want to do is make money. We'll build you a doghouse in a snowstorm. We don't care.
Right.
Now it's kind of trying to figure out what it is that we believe we do best. And part of that is that we've dipped our toe in the water on a whole bunch of things. But But the other thing is now, what I find is when I want to meet somebody and help grow a relationship, my desire is to figure out what I can do to bring them value. And so if that agent is looking to get involved in the new construction world, whether it is affectionately we call them dirt dogs, the guys and gals that just go find land deals, or whether it is someone who's looking to represent buyers on custom houses or things like that, it's sitting down and figuring out, what are the needs of that person on the other side of the table, and what are they seeing. The money is a byproduct, and there's certainly, understand, we do this to make a living. I'm not inferring that that's not a really, really big deal, but the only time we've ever had things not go the way that they quote unquote should have is when the focus was the money. And so I think that if the focus is the relationship, what you're going to find is that first meeting that you have isn't necessarily going to be the one that gets you there. And ironically, it may be that you meet with me and we realize that's not the direction you want to go, but because I've been doing this for so long, I can introduce you to someone else. So being relatively selfless, wanting to bring value, I think is absolutely the area that gives you the ability to be memorable, as well as not that person who I'm avoiding your phone call. I'm excited to talk to you because I don't feel like you're trying to sell me something all the time. I don't feel like you're always on the ask, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I tell people that I feel real estate really isn't a sales field. It's a service field.
Mhm.
The people who get it just to sell, just to try, 'cause these aren't TVs.
Sure.
It's the people who take it as service minded that are most likely going to do better long term than the people who are just burning through people. And I've been making notes here, and value in relationships are what keeps coming up in the conversation with you. And I appreciate that because that is what's important. We have to show value in whatever we do. And it's about the relationships. It's the people that we can touch and help and and serve. And it all comes back around. And sometimes it doesn't, but might as well be that service minded.
You had said earlier kind of about that. Like I look at, what do we do for a living? And what we really are is a marketing company that does customer service who happens to build houses. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't know who we are, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And if we don't service you and make sure that we're doing exactly what your expectation is of us, then you're not going to be happy. And we happen to build houses. And so, that's when I look at a business landscape in general that is commoditized. Certainly that comes up in real estate. We hear that consistently. The question is going to be, what service are you giving that cannot be replicated? And that to me is where that value add is. That's the one thing that can't just be, and that's difficult to replicate at scale. Very difficult. That's why we see, in our case, the publicly traded builders are doing more manufacturing. It's not a bad thing. They can't, if we were building hundreds of houses a year, I couldn't have the intimate relationship with the clients that I have now. It just fundamentally wouldn't work. And so everybody figuring out what is for them, and then being able to say, okay, this is how I want to structure my business. I mean, real estate teams were not a thing 15 years ago. Now we're seeing it everywhere. They're not right or wrong. It's just a type of business model. And so, getting an understanding of what it is that you want to do, and then really, really digging in. But at the end of it, the core will always be those relationships, either with your teammates or with your clients or your escrow officers or your lenders or whatever it is.
So what areas can people hire you to help them in? What geographical areas?
Geographical areas really in Oregon, Tri-County. So we're kind of Clackamas County, Multnomah County, Washington County. We do some in Clark County. As far as what we're doing, obviously, as I spoke to earlier, we're doing custom homes, and then we're also doing land development. And what we do in land development is either helping people with their due diligence. I mean, we're blessed to have relationships with all of the different people that we need to help figure out what a project can do. So if you're a person that has a piece of property and you're wondering what is the best use of it, we can help you with that. We can also be the people that either buy it or help you get it to that next stage. And if you're a person who's looking to build a house, we're certainly the people that we would love to have the opportunity to talk to you about it.
That's awesome. I appreciate so much that you took this time at the end of a Thursday where I'm sure you were running around doing lots of things. So, any last place, anything you want people to know, or do you want to tell where to find you?
Well, I appreciate you giving us the opportunity. I think that any chance we get to talk about an industry that we love is incredibly valuable. So I would say if people have questions, anlonconstruction.com is our website. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're always looking to learn and to be able to share and grow. And, a lot of people helped me when I was first starting out in this industry. So if we can help out agents or people that are listening to you, we would love to have that opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Mike.